husband, father, small business owner, state senator, and candidate for governor. Now I believe our best days are ahead of us, but only if we keep the failures of Washington far, far away from Kansas. Today my opponent will talk about how he supports public education, but he won't say how, or how he'll encourage economic growth, but he won't give specifics. My opponent will talk about his so-called roadmap. The roadmap must be more than a destination. It must provide a clear path with clear directions for arriving at that better tomorrow. And just look at the roadmap my opponents followed during his 15 years in Washington. Senator Brownback bailed out Wall Street. He supported earmarks to the tunes of billions of dollars for the special interests. His legacy is an economy that has mired Axel deep in the ditch. And now he wants to come back to Kansas and take us down that same failed path. That's why on election day we must say no to Washington, no to its failed career politicians, and yes to the Tom Holland Kelly Cultural team.
A coalition called School for Fair Funding has said it plans to file a lawsuit against the state in October, upset about how the state doles out its education funding. How would you, as governor, address this particular funding crisis? Thank you.
Senator Brownback will respond first.
This is the key issue facing us, and it is the problem with the funding formula. The formula itself is the problem. It takes 55% of SGF funding in the state of Kansas, and yet only delivers a little more than half of that to the classroom. We have got to address the funding formula itself. We've got to go at that. We've got to have a coalition of people pulling us together to do this, but addressing the funding formula. And we've got to have certain parameters, like no forced consolidation of school districts done by the state funding. Needs to be in this funding formula, and the constitutional requirement must be hit of a suitable education for every student in every place across the state of Kansas. But until we get at this funding formula, you're going to continue to see this litigation constantly. This current funding formula has been under litigation or the threat of litigation for the past decade. It's the formula itself that we've got to go at, and I will lead in working with the legislature, not the courts. It needs to be done by the legislature to solve this problem.
I ran for the legislature because I was concerned about funding for our public schools. Year after year, my wife Barbara and I saw our children's classroom sizes grow larger while important programs were being cut. Now, I was proud to vote for that 2006 school finance formula. That formula passed constitutional muster, and that formula stopped the litigation. Now, Senator Brownback, you have said time and time again that you will change the formula, but you have never said how you would change it. You want to take us back to the time when local property taxes constituted 75% of our formula.
Senators, the last 2 years we've used hundreds of millions of dollars in federal stimulus funds to backfill the holes in the state budget when our revenues fell short. All that federal stimulus money will go away in the next budget year. I'd like to know how you as governor would propose to deal with that.
Senator Holland will be first to respond. Well, thank you for your question. You know, I was part of a bipartisan coalition of senators, with the majority of them being Republicans, that worked to cut over $1 billion of our state government operations. We passed a budget that protected further K-12, social service, and public safety programs. Now, my opponent, Sam Brownback, he has never balanced a budget in Washington. He's been more than happy to spend your money. Senator Brownback voted $200 billion to bail out Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. He said it was, quote, appropriate for taxpayers to spend $85 billion. Hey, you may not feel like your opponent's record, but that's what he's done. I am the candidate to lead this state. Thank you.
the record straight. I voted against the bailout. I'm sorry you can't figure it out. I voted against Obamacare, and my opponent supports Obamacare. Now back to the budget question that you asked. We need to put forward, and we will put forward, a state government spending freeze. We do a spending freeze to start off with. That's one thing we've got to do. Then I think we need to go through all of state government and looking at the functions that are our high priorities and fund those and eliminate other areas that are not high priorities.
30 seconds rebuttal time, Senator Holland.
Get your facts right,
Well, once again,
Holland!
there you go. And to set the record straight, Senator Brownback voted to spend $200 billion to bail out Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Brownback has sponsored billions in corporate earmarks for the special interests. We can't allow him to mine the store. Who do you want balancing the budget? A businessman or a career Washington politician? That's the question before us in a second.
We've touched on it a little bit, but I would like to hear some more specific answers. There's been a lot of talk over the past few years about Kansas being a national leader in building wind farms in the state for energy. It was Governor Parkinson's wish in his last State of the State to make Kansas a leader in renewable energy. What's your stand on wind farms as an opportunity for Kansas to bring manufacturing jobs and transmissions to the Sunflower State?
Well, it's a wonderful opportunity. The American Wind Energy Association says that Kansas has the third best potential in this country to be generating power from wind resources. Now I was pleased to vote in the legislature for a renewable energy standard. The standard is going to require utilities across this state to generate 20% of their electricity by renewable sources by the year 2020. Now as governor, to be sure we realize make Kansas Saudi Arabia of wind. We've got to get transmission lines up. We'll work with the Southwest Power Pool to make that happen. As governor, I'm also going to work with the KCC and other stakeholders to ensure that we make net metering a reality. We've legalized it in the state, but we've got to get residential users and commercial customers to enjoy the benefits of net metering. That's going to drive green jobs in this state.
I want to compliment the Parkinson administration on wind. I think he's done an excellent job on growing wind power in the state of Kansas, and I look forward to continuing that effort. I think we need a national RES at a low level. That's what I've been getting strong support from the American Wind Energy business. I provided the deciding vote in committee to move that to the floor. I think we've got to get the V plan built. I called people at the Southwest Power Pool to get them to support that V plan, because our key for wind is we've got to be able to get our wind to market. And we need transmission lines to be able to do that.
All right. Once again, renewable energy standard is not a new concept. You know, where has our U.S. Senator been for the past 15 years? I guess it takes him to run for governor to figure out he has to get on board the RES bandwagon. Another fact is, our senator is addicted to fossil fuels. And he has passed tax cuts for foreign oil companies who have lined his campaign coffers with cash. You know, he says he's for renewable energy, but he has never voted to increase fuel efficiency standards for automobiles. I'm sorry. Sam's lagging on energy issues, and we need a leader.
There's been a lot of talk lately about the federal deficit, but the state of Kansas accepted stimulus money, and also the past legislative session passed some bills that brought down additional federal money. One of them was with nursing homes, the other one was with seatbelts. Considering concern about the rising debt, would you be willing to sign any other bills that would bring the state new federal cash? Would you accept additional stimulus money, imagining something like that might happen in the future?
In the Kansas Senate, I worked with bipartisan legislature to put together a budget that supports our needs for 2011 as 2012. We have a funding formula to make that happen. Now, yes, in 2011 there were some federal sources of money that we relied on. Some of those are going away for 2012. Now, we feel we have a package in place, a revenue package that can sustain us through that period. We do not need additional tax increases to support our budget going forward. I do want to talk about my opponent. You know, if he's interested in running for governor, he has turned around, he voted against federal Medicaid money. Mr. Brownback himself was willing to blow an $130 million hole in our fiscal 11 budget. That's not being fiscally responsible. That's not taking care of those who are in need. We need a better set of Kansas values than that, Mr. President.
We have got to stop depending on the federal government to pay for The federal government is currently borrowing 41 cents of every dollar that it is spending. This is unsustainable. The federal government must shrink its size of the overall. It cannot raise taxes because we're taxed too high now. We've got to get the state budget under control so it's not dependent upon federal government increasing monies from the federal government.
30 seconds. Folks, I'm a small business owner. I have to balance my books. I have to live within my means. Sometimes you have to do more with less. And you just heard Sam talking about the federal government. He is the federal government. To Congress, your national debt was $4 trillion. Now it's $13 trillion. Mr. Brownback needs to come home and get out of government and let a business person manage our state. You know, I am so glad for this debate today. I hope it's the first of many. Because real leaders shouldn't hide their agenda from the people. Now today we learned about my opponent's values. Like letting people who hire illegal immigrants get away with it, or protecting companies who send our jobs overseas, or defunding our public schools, or bailing out Wall Street and abandoning Main Street. Now, those are values, they're Washington values, and they're not right for Kansas. Now, this debate also left a lot of unanswered questions. My opponent wants to change the school finance formula. He won't say how. My opponent wants to change the way we select Supreme Court justices. He won't say how. My opponent wants to shift the tax burden. He won't say in what direction. We cannot afford to allow the failed career Washington politicians who hide their agenda to disrupt decades of moderate, pragmatic leadership in the Kansas governor's office. So do we want a governor? Do we want a governor who's a failed career Washington politician? Or do we want a Kansas where every child can attend a quality public school? While elderly and disabled are treated with dignity and respect. That's the Kansas I want. That's the Kansas you want. You deserve. And that's the Kansas we'll have on November 2nd when you elect the Tom Holland Kelly Cultural team. Thank you.